The Pittsburgh Steelers have their 90-man roster, but one former player believes he can predict the next signing. What's going on, everybody? I'm Noah Strackbine. Thank you for jumping on to Steelers to Go, your daily to-go cup of Pittsburgh Steelers news and analysis. Find us on youtube.com/allsteelerstalker. Subscribe anywhere you get your podcast. Today, we are talking about a potential next signing for the Pittsburgh Steelers, one that former inside linebacker Vince Williams has predicted. First, I got to say that I apologize for last week. I needed a vacation, got back from a longer vacation, realized just how exhausted I was, took a couple of days away from Steelers to Go, recouped, let some news build up. Now we are back, ready to go, better than ever. So let's dive into it. Vince Williams watched the USFL championship game, and the Pittsburgh Maulers unfortunately didn't win it, but he had the same thought that many of us had. Where can the Pittsburgh Steelers go fishing in the USFL pond? And the Pittsburgh Maulers seem like the easy choice to go and look first before they look anywhere. Not technically a hometown team because they don't play in the city of Pittsburgh, but it'd be cool and it'd be a good story, and it'd obviously have a very good connection if the Steelers were to go out and grab some of these Maulers and make them part of their 90-man roster. And Vince Williams has one name that he believes should be top on that list, and that name is inside linebacker Reuben Foster. And I have to say that I agree with him. Foster finished the season with 53 tackles and an interception, but in the championship game, he had 7 tackles, a sack, and a tackle for loss. And all throughout the playoffs, you realized very quickly that Reuben Foster was the identity of this defense. He was the middleman. He controlled everything that was happening. If he was making plays, the defense as a whole was making plays. And when the defense was fighting as hard as they could to make plays and try and stop the Birmingham Stallions offense, he was the one working in the middle, trying to keep their hopes alive. You felt it. You saw that this guy, I don't want to say was a man amongst boys because he wasn't. The USFL was filled with a ton of talent. And the fact that the Maulers defense got them to where they needed to be was huge. But it was just that. You watched Reuben Foster man a defense of a team as a whole that probably shouldn't have been where it needed to be. To go into the playoffs 4-6 and find yourselves in the USFL championship, I mean, that's as good as it gets for a team who many gave up on early in the season when they couldn't find a win to save their lives. And even if the championship game wasn't super competitive, there were moments where you felt, oh, okay, this is close enough where it's a game. It's worthy of watching. And the Maulers defense is the reason that that was the case. Outside of Chris Blewett, who I don't know who needs a kicker in the NFL, but whoever does needs to go sign that man immediately, because if you're that good in the NFL as you were in the USFL, you are going to immediately be an impact kicker. You are immediately going to be one of the best in the league. Chris Blewett had himself a season, had himself a playoff run, and had himself a championship game. Somebody go and get that man. But as of Reuben Foster, there are questions that come with this. Obviously, there were the off-the-field issues many moons ago, and then there was an ACL surgery a few seasons ago, and here we are. At this point, everybody deserves a second chance, both with injury and off-the-field issues. And if it's been a couple of years and there's no trouble, there's no injury concerns, an NFL team should consider Reuben Foster. He's still younger than 30. He's got plenty of time left. It seems that at points he could play in the NFL, and you saw that in sparks. And I think that some teams are still looking for an inside linebacker. And fortunately enough, and Vince Williams usually knows what he's talking about with this stuff, the Pittsburgh Steelers actually do need an inside linebacker. And people are going to say, oh, well, they have 6. They just signed Nick Kwiatkowski. There's no real need for them to go out and get somebody else. Why would they go out and sign Reuben Foster and waste another roster spot and have to get rid of somebody else? Well, it's very easy. Most summers, the Steelers carry 7 inside linebackers with them into training camp. They allow themselves to have a real competition for that 4th and 5th spot. Right now, they have a real competition for the 5th spot, but that's about it. And if I had to guess, Kwiatkowski has a pretty big upper hand over Chappelle Russell just because he has starter experience in the NFL. He's a little bit older. At some point, he was considered the inside linebacker for the Las Vegas Raiders. The guy has hit higher volumes and has been a better player than Chappelle Russell will be or is right now. And I would say that that competition, while it's definitely real, isn't as strong as the Pittsburgh Steelers would like to make it. They typically carry 7 inside linebackers with them into training camp. Right now, they have 6. On top of that, Cole Holcomb is still dealing with a foot surgery, and I don't think that he is holding himself back as much as the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to keep him on a pitch count, much like they did during training camp at OTAs, just to assure themselves that they aren't giving him too many reps in a situation where it's not dire. Yeah, you want Cole Holcomb to adjust to the defense. You want him to feel as comfortable as possible on the field with his new teammates once week 1 rolls around. But at the same time, you don't want him to get hurt in training camp or re-aggravate something or have to spend the first chunk of the season catching back up because he got hurt in training camp and had to miss some actual time instead of just some team development reps here and there. Keeping him on a pitch count makes a lot of sense. Much like Larry Ogunjobi a year ago, you could walk in here, you could still feel 100% ready to go. You could still feel like you're part of this defense and you understand what's going on and you're good enough and comfortable enough to make plays. But at the same time, you're not risking more injury. Cole Holcomb will be on a pitch count. So technically, you have 5.5 inside linebackers walking into training camp. You need at least another one. Reuben Foster feels like the guy. Then you ask, well, where are you going to get somebody? Because you already have 90 players on your roster. You'd have to give up somebody. Well, the Steelers have done themselves huge favors in that aspect. And don't get it wrong. There will be a million changes with that 90-man roster between now and week 1 of the regular season, or I guess week 3 of the preseason. The Steelers will adjust on the fly so many times. If somebody goes down with an injury, they will immediately replace him. If somebody goes down with an injury and they have a better opportunity with a different position, they will make that move. If they feel that they are short in a position, they will get rid of someone else from a different position to add to where it is needed on their 90-man roster. This is not a set in stone roster. It's not even close. The 90-man adjusts so many times during training camp that it's hard to keep up with who's coming in and who's coming out. And the Steelers start off with easy replacements if they wanted to go out and add another inside linebacker through the USFL. They have 13 wide receivers, 11 defensive backs, 7 offensive guards, and 7 offensive tackles all on their 90-man roster right now. 13 wide receivers, when you have guys like Gunnar Olszewski, Miles Boykin, Calvin Austin, all competing. Des Fitzpatrick is another one, all competing for a roster spot, 1 roster spot, and you have 13 guys. I guess after you eliminate Allen Robinson, George Pickens, Calvin Austin, I guess, because even if he's competing for a role, he's not necessarily competing for a final spot. And Deontay Johnson, you have 9 wide receivers competing for 1 to 2 roster spots. A little excessive. You have 7 offensive guards and 7 offensive tackles, which means that you could have 3 groups of offensive linemen and still feel fine. Still have extras. And I get that, yeah, you want bulk. I understand that. But you also have to imagine that you have a competition going on. Dan Moore and Broderick Jones are going to compete, which means they're going to take a lot of snaps. Kevin Dotson, Nate Herbig, Kendrick Green, they're going to compete, which means they're going to take a lot of snaps. You don't need the Dylan Cook taking as many snaps or the Jared Williams taking as many snaps. You could get rid of one of those guys and feel comfortable that everything's going to be just fine come the regular season. Nobody's going to miss out on anything important. And then 11 defensive backs. I mean, it makes sense. You want bulk. But again, you're going to have guys like Luke Barku and James Pierre and Corey Trice competing for that final spot. You don't really need a bunch of other guys competing for a roster spot that they're probably not going to get. You could find a loophole there. You could find a hole in your roster to create one more roster spot for Reuben Foster. And I think it makes a ton of sense. I think Reuben Foster has explosiveness. It does worry me some that he's not that big of a pass defender. He's only got one interception on the season, but still one interception is pretty impressive. He's more of a thumper. He's more of a run stuffer. He's more of a, I'll go find the quarterback if I need to find the quarterback. He's a field general. He's a in the middle, going to play, going to make a thump, going to make somebody feel like I'm an inside linebacker and they're going to have to worry about me for the rest of the game. I do fear the Steelers already have a number of those guys, and he would fit right in with everybody else and be essentially the same player as a Landon Roberts and Mark Robinson. But at the same time, it's tough to find somebody at this point in the offseason, unless it's like a Deion Jones, who I've talked about before, and I believe is a perfect signing for the Pittsburgh Steelers if the money could work out. It's tough to go out and find an inside linebacker right now that's going to fill that gap the way that the Steelers need to fill that gap. If they're looking for pure talent, somebody who's got a chip on their shoulder, somebody who's looking real good right now, somebody who's coming off a very good spring league season, Reuben Foster is the name. Vince Williams usually knows what he's talking about. I trust him with this one. And I got to say, I agree. The Pittsburgh Steelers should go out and they should get Reuben Foster because it makes a lot of sense to add another inside linebacker. And if you're looking at the list, he might be the most impressive one in free agency right now.